Welcome back to Morning Express. It's now time for The Way It Is. I'll introduce the panel we have this morning. To my extreme left, we have Senator for Mombasa County and also the WIPA Secretary General, the WIPA Movement Secretary General, that Omar Hassan. Good morning and thank you for joining us. We also have Ambrose Weda, who is a lawyer. Thank you for joining us. And also on set, we already had him on, is Professor Michael Wainaina. This is The Way It Is. Remember, you're welcome to participate. Our Twitter handles are going to be displayed as the show is going on. Feel free to carry on. And also, we'll open up the phone lines as we carry on and give you an opportunity to participate in what is going on. Also, we might be crossing over to Lee Funeral Home, where we're expecting the procession for the late governor for Nyeri, Nderitu Gachagua, to begin. And the funeral is going to be held today around 11 a.m. in Nyeri. So we'll be crossing over there to bring you live pictures of what is going on at Lee Funeral Home as we carry on. But for now, let's start with what has been happening. And I think let's start with, first of all, the headline on the Standard this morning, with apparently the president declaring or saying or giving an order that those who are implicated in corruption cases should not be nominated. Your thoughts on that? Let me start with you, Ambrose Weda.
Thank you so much. I think one of our biggest problem as a coalition, one that President Uhuru and the deputy are facing in this election, is about corruption. They think the president has done very little or next to nothing.
So do you think this is now finally cracking the whip?
This would be one of the clear messages that those who are implicated, those who are under investigation, those who are charged, it is upon the president in an area where he has control, which is his party. Because in other areas, he doesn't have control over IBC and the rest. This one, he is able to do something where he can say, I'm serious about this corruption.
So do you think it's a good thing that he has...
I think it has legal issues, but it is a good thing. On his part, as the party leader, it is good for him to say, look, you have put me in this corner, and I have power over my party. Those who are under investigations, those who are charged, please keep away. I know somebody may go to court and challenge it, but it is a good thing, and I think it should be adhered to. I ask my brother, Honorable Tuju, and the others that these people who are charged or who have been accused, if we can get just a little dot to cling on, let's keep them out so that Kenyans also become better as we move.
But isn't one innocent until proved guilty, according to the law? Because now that would be literally condemning them to a judgment that has not...
They are not being condemned. They are simply being told, in this party, I remember Honorable Raila Odinga once said that a party is a club. In this club, we are saying, clear yourself first. You know, corruption is like adultery. You can hardly catch it in many areas, but you can see it. If today Mr. Weda just wakes up and I have a jet or a helicopter from my law practice, and you can clearly see and add one is a sugar baron, and sugar has been having good prices. When you add one on one, you can see that there was something.
All right,
but
hold
you
that
may
thought.
Not have
we'll come back to that, and would like to cross over now to Lee Funeral Home, where the body of the late Nderitu Gachagua, the governor for Nyeri, who passed away in London, is about to leave for Nyeri. So we'd like to cross over to Lee Funeral Home, where we have live images of what is going on there as they prepare to begin the entourage from Lee Funeral Home all the way to Nyeri. Of course, this is the funeral is expected to take place today, or is scheduled to take place today from 11 a.m. in Nyeri County. And we'd like to cross over live now and see what is happening there as they prepare to leave for Nyeri this morning. We do know that the governor passed away in London after fighting for about 2.5 to 3 years with pancreatic cancer, and he succumbed, but we already know that there's, let's see whether we can get those live images coming on now.
Kama watatokea huko. Zinaona watu wengine wanatokea huko. Kanisa mbili litatokea hapo.
Is the vehicle ready?
Yeah, it is.
Where is it?
Yeah.
We take it there. So how is it? We don't exit. We exit
Possibly we can reverse this one a little. No. We can just exit here. Up and
and then we get back.
Okay.
Tushaanza kusukumana na tuko wachache.
Rudi huko tupeze.
So we create space here because they will study. So just push back.
Nekee moto. Wewe boss toka bwana.
Tukae nyuma.
Wewe nani boss?
Oya. Oh, miss. The best picture.
Toka bwana. Kwa live.
Turudi nyuma.
And then we
Nderitu Gachagua as they prepare to begin their final journey to lay him to rest in Nyeri County. We can see some of the pallbearers there, the current governor for Nyeri, and that is the procession that is just about to begin. And of course, they're going to proceed all the way to Nyeri. The burial is expected to take place from 11 a.m. this morning. The late governor died in London as he was undergoing treatment for pancreatic cancer. He had been ailing for 2.5 to 3 years, thereabouts, but still held to office, and he's one who has been described by many as a fighter. He fought to the very last minute and was still as active as he could be until the doctors asked him to relax a little bit just to try and deal with the ailment. But he held on to office until the very last minute. So that is the casket being put into the hearse, and the procession will begin and move on and drive all the way to Nyeri. And we are waiting to see whether there's probably going to be no service here, maybe just some prayers, and then they will proceed. They had indicated through the government spokesman that there will be no service until the funeral service, which is going to be held in Nyeri. So if anything, here maybe they'll just have some prayers, then proceed. So here what we have is just the casket being put into the hearse, then possibly depart for Nyeri. It is estimated to take about 2 to 2.5 hours to get to Nyeri. Then after that, the funeral is scheduled to begin around 11. Right here on KTN News, we are going to be bringing you details of this as it continues. We are going to cross over to Nyeri and find out what the preparations are in Nyeri. We do have our reporter there, Karon Derry, who's on standby, and of course is going to be giving us details of the preparations that are taking place in Nyeri. We are currently showing you live images from Lee Funeral Home, where we have the casket of the late governor for Nyeri, Nderitu Gachagua, that has just been put into the hearse right there. Then from here, they will proceed to Nyeri, where the funeral is going to be taking place, and soon we're going to be crossing over to where the final resting place for the late governor is going to be. We are, of course, expecting that the president is going to be present for the funeral, and we're going to be crossing over to Nyeri to bring you details of that right here as we continue on KTN News. This is at Lee Funeral Home, where we have quite a number of governors present as they have come to receive the body of the late Nderitu Gachagua and send him and bid him fare thee well as they now will proceed to Nyeri. There is no service that's going to be held right here at Lee Funeral Home, but they will be proceeding to Nyeri straight away, where the funeral service is going to be held. Then the final rites will be done for him and he will be laid to rest.
Those who are going by here.
So right there, what we're having now is live images of what's happening at Lee Funeral Home as the body of the late Derito Gachagua, former governor for Nyeri, has been put into the hearse as they proceed to Nyeri. We've seen a number of governors present to receive him. The current governor for Nyeri being there, Samuel Wamadhai, who was sworn in on Friday, I believe it was. And now they will proceed to Nyeri, where they'll pay the final rites for the late Governor Derito Gachagua. Expected in Nyeri is the President of the Republic of Kenya, Uhuru Kenyatta. Of course, we do expect that all governors will be present, or most governors will be present. Karon Derry, our reporter on the ground in Nyeri, is going to be giving us details of the preparation so far in just a bit, and of course updating us on what we should expect from the program that is likely to run from 11. They're going by road to Nyeri, so that's estimated to take about 2 hours, 2 or 2.5 hours for them to get to Nyeri, and we can see the hearse there leaving Lee Funeral Home. There is no ceremony or anything that's going to take place here at Lee Funeral Home. It is purely just leaving for the function that is expected to take place from 11 in Nyeri County. That right there we see in front of us is the hearse that is carrying the body of the late governor for Nyeri, Derito Gachagua. And they're leaving to proceed now to Nyeri County, where they're going to lay his body to rest. As we had indicated earlier, we're going to cross over to Nyeri to our reporter who's on the ground, Karon Derry, who is going to be updating us on what we should expect as the program for the day. Expected are dignitaries that are going to be present, including the president, the deputy president, and governors, the council of governors who are going to be there. Of course, she's going to be updating us on what we should expect in terms of the running of the program. Now, the 64-year-old late governor died on the 24th of February at Royal Marsden Hospital in London. He has left wife Margaret Karungaru Nderito, who, of course, we have seen bearing this very, very difficult moment. And as a country, of course, we have to remember that there is the public office that he held, but there's also the private office that he held. And it's not just the country or the county that is mourning, but we also have a family that is mourning as we speak. That is the hearse leaving now for Nyeri County. You can see the casket has already been put in the hearse, and they are now proceeding to Nyeri. In about 2 hours, they should be arriving in Nyeri County, where the program is expected to begin around about 11 a.m. Right here on KTN News, we are going to give you updates and live coverage of this as it continues. So we can see the procession beginning from Lee Funeral Home. They are leaving Lee Funeral Home now and heading directly to Nyeri. The hearse is already at the front of that particular convoy, the hearse that is carrying the body of the late governor for Nyeri, Derito Gachagua. He, of course, he's the first governor to die in office, and he has been described as a brave man who fought both the ailment, but also fought a number of impeachments in his office. He has been described as a man with 9 lives because he survived impeachment processions severally, but came out strong. And we also have seen him fight and battle his ailment. The last public appearance that he is remembered to have had was in November of 2016, and this is when the president was in Nyeri County. At that point, of course, if you compare the way he looked and the way he was when he took over office, he definitely was ailing and was struggling with the ailment that he had, pancreatic cancer, but still was very, very strong. So the funeral is expected to take place from 11 a.m. and this, of course, is going to be covered live right here on KTN News. Karen Derry is on standby in Nyeri, and we're going to be crossing over shortly just to find out what plans are in place, what is happening in Nyeri as they expect to receive the body of the late governor for Nyeri, Nderitu Gachagua. So those are pictures of the convoy. The hearse is already at the front, has already left. And these are vehicles possibly that are going to be in convoy all the way from Nairobi to Nyeri County as they proceed to lay the late governor to rest in his final resting place, which is going to be in Nyeri County.
Nataka kudambia Citizen. Lakini wacha tripod, chukua tu mic.
Right, so we come back now to studio, but we're going to be crossing over to Nyeri in just a bit, where we are going to have what is happening in Nyeri as they prepare for the laying to rest of the late governor for Nyeri, Nderitu Gachagua. But right here in studio, just a quick reminder of who we have on set. We have Senator for Mombasa County, Omar Hassan. We also are joined now by a Member of Parliament, aspirant for Kisumu Central, and that is Onyango Olo, former TNA Secretary General. And we also have Professor Michael Wainaina and Ambrose Weda, who is a lawyer. Gentlemen, just to bring us back to speed to where we were talking about the nomination or rather, we're talking about the Jubilee aspirants who possibly may be barred from nominations, and this is on the basis of the fact that they may have pending issues to do with corruption. Of course, we're asking whether this is the right way to go. Maybe to hear from you, Senator Omar Hassan. I think it was you we were coming to.
Yeah, okay. In the instrument, the NASA instrument that we signed, formalizing the coalition, we plugged in a code of conduct. The code of conduct tries to raise the bar of accountability. In fact, if you listen to the launch and the speech that was particularly made by Senator Wetangula, which was read on behalf of all the four principals, he actually made it very clear that when you hold public office and you are being investigated for any reason, you must step aside until you are cleared of those allegations. So then it will hold that you equally cannot come into that public office when you're under investigation.
So do you think it's a good thing that the president has, as it were, cracked the whip on his party?
The debate right now is to raise the threshold of integrity in public office. Because you see, what we're saying is, it is nice that Jubilee has borrowed Q from us. Because it is about raising the threshold of
How have they borrowed the cue from?
That's exactly what the code of conduct in the NASA instrument.
It's one thing to have it as a code of conduct. It's another thing altogether to implement it.
Yeah, but you see, I believe when our principals were signing to it and the Secretary Generals were appending their signatures as the seal of the very respective parties, I believe we're not signing a piece of paper for the purposes of aesthetics. So in fact, I remember making that interpretation, that if you have to wait until investigations against you are completed before you assume an office in terms of raising the bar on integrity or accountability, then it follows.
So for you say the president it's a good thing that he has done that. It's a step in the right direction.
You cannot come in when you're the person who's been said to have eaten everything from NYS. You're the one who's had everything. You've vomited on your shoes over the Eurobond scandal and everything else, and then you know, and there's probably credible allegations, maybe you're already in court, and then you just want to seek public office. I think it would be good to see that we're able to have ESCC put a gag on that type of candidacy.
All right, Onyangolo, it'll be interesting to hear what you have to say about this. Do you think the president has done a good thing?
Mike, in 2012, I was on record together with my colleague Weda, insisting that the constitutional provisions of innocence until proven guilty must be respected. That however serious any allegations against an individual are, we must respect the legal process, because the converse is that we will end up convicting in the public parlance people who could otherwise be also innocent. I still stand by that very position, that while it is important that we bring issues of integrity into our electoral process, it is not fair that by the mere fact that you have been subjected to investigations, we stop you from running for a political office. What am I saying? What will stop the president or the government or the authorities from tomorrow taking Senator Hassan Omar before the courts or before ESCC? As to whether he will be acquitted, that's another case altogether. Or tomorrow, some overzealous leader banging the NASA leadership before ESCC on trumped-up charges. And we say, so long as there are charges there, please, you cannot run. My position is, it is a wrong position. It goes against the constitutional and legal requirements of this country. IEBC has got a code of conduct that we are signing, and we must execute that. But that a mere fact that your name has been mentioned, that you have been taken to EACC, you must not run, to me that is wrong.
Okay.
Senator Hassan has brought a very interesting case, that if there are credible allegations, how do we determine credible allegations?
It's only through the court of law.
Thank you. So for me, that is just being overzealous.
But somebody might say that the reason maybe you're saying that is because you also have things that possibly you're answering to. There is the
4 billion,
4 billion which apparently you may have cost the taxpayer, and you're also aspiring to go for Member of Parliament for Kisumu Central. So maybe that's why you take that stand.
In 2012, I had nothing against me when I defended the president and his deputy on the same position, and I maintained that ICC, notwithstanding, they had a right to run for the offices that they ran for and won. To date, maybe it would surprise you, I've never been summoned by Parliament, I've never been summoned by EACC, I've never been summoned by any investigative body to answer about this supposed 4 billion transaction. So I don't think that would be the inducement. I have been consistent on this, that one must be presumed innocent until proven guilty. The moment you are found guilty, again, that very constitution provides for a remedy. If you are convicted for a period of more than 6 months, please get out of it.
Okay. Prof?
Yes. This is what you get when you have a political class that the research we were talking about tells us that it is dishonest. They cannot remember. It is the political class, Michael, that mutilated Chapter 6 to make sure that they get a free pass into political office. They cannot now turn around and come and tell us that they are the custodians of ethics and good morals and start issuing regulations by fiat and saying who can and who cannot run for office. That is number one. Number two, is there need to vet people who are getting into political office? Yes, there is need to do that. Can that argument be made by Awan Uhuru Kenyatta? No, it cannot be made. Because it would not just be wrong, like Onyango Oroha said, it would be hypocritical. He himself is a beneficiary of the short-changing of Chapter 6. Onyango Oroha, before his conversion, before his recent conversion, was one of his most eloquent defenders of the impunity of ICC suspects running for political office. Michael, I don't know if you remember, there is a story in the Bible about a guy who was forgiven 20 shillings or something like that. And he comes out after he has been, he was forgiven a lot of money. He was in jail and he was pardoned. And he came out and was holding another guy ransom
for a very little amount.
Okay, so here we have a group, a fellow who should be grateful to the...
Just finish that story because you see some of us. It might
sorry,
be nicer.
okay.
You know, you guys knew what
We share. Sorry.
It could be something that,
So this story is given, it's given about the question of pardoning and the question of guilt. So this guy was accused of debts, being unable to pay very, very huge debts. And he was thrown into jail. And the accusers pardoned him. And he was released. Only to meet a guy who owed him 20 shillings. Very little. And he was on his neck telling him, pay my 20 shillings. Remember, this guy had just come from jail. Okay?
And has been pardoned.
And had been pardoned. So here is a guy who ran.
Okay, go ahead.
Yes. So it's not just wrong, it is hypocritical. That is number one. Number two, Jubilee never saw a banana peel that they didn't want to slip off, to fall from. Okay? One of the biggest blunders that Uhuru did was to present a list in Parliament. You remember the infamous list in Parliament. The only thing that that list has cost him and his regime is grief. Has it helped him to fight corruption? Absolutely not. Now, here is another fiat of him. They're called unforced errors. Nobody forced him. Nobody told him to do it. Now, he is on a pedestal shouting about things that cannot be enforced, about things that he himself cannot do anything about. They locked out Maina Jenga, the Mungiki guy, and they said A, B, C, D. Okay? What did Maina Jenga tell them? Maina Jenga said, Uhuru and Ruto will call me. That's what he said. You cannot pretend to have powers that you do not have.
Okay.
Yes.
All right, Weda.
You see, these guys are mixing two issues. They are mixing general accusations, rape, murder, whatever.
They're not general accusations.
They're not general accusations.
The issue here is theft, corruption, theft of the very funds that will be used to pay you. You remember there are ministers who, while they were under investigations, were asked to step aside. There's this phrase in Kenya, step aside. In other words, you are still innocent, but still stay out of office. President Uhuru has not said everybody should not be in office. He has only said, my party, over which I have control, as a party leader, I am saying, please, don't come when you are under investigations. You can go to NASA or ODM or
But
whichever.
how can he say that when, for over a year, he was in ICC? He became president while he was still under
He understood what I've
investigation.
said.
Not under investigation.
He was
Indicted.
not under.
Indicted.
He was not indicted over crimes, economic crimes. Our laws here. Our laws here. Actually, when you are charged with rape today, if I'm charged with rape today, I'll continue being chairman of Sony. But when I'm charged with corruption, the law itself requires me to be out until.
I don't think so.
All right, Onyangolo, maybe...
Just before, I like the interventions made by Professor Michael Naina. It just raises the threshold of the conversation. But ultimately, people must start to move in a certain direction. I'm one of those people who agrees that the political class is extremely flawed. But if you're able to sit up in a meeting and at least get them to ascribe or append their signatures to a code of conduct, you have moved them a step forward. And apparently now, your agitation will be about enforcement of that code of conduct, which Michael talks about. Michael Gitonga talked about, who's not a professor. So I think what happens is because I said Michael, and so Michael the professor and Michael was not a professor. So what happens is this whole class or club or oligarch of politicians is you decimate it piece by piece, because all these people are benefiting in many regards. You know, are cartels that even if you look at counties, these are cartels running a certain enterprise. Today, in that code of conduct, do you know what it says, the code of conduct for your code? It says that you shall not have an interest in any business that you're doing with the county, that you shall not engage in business either directly or indirectly, so you cannot even take a proxy. That's a very high threshold.
That is in the law.
Enforcement might almost be impossible. But at least it's a statement of intent. So I think what you need to do is to have some of these leaders start to publish these statements of intent, be they from whatever formation they're coming from. And then we give us fodder. Now the activists, the civil society, the media gives us fodder. It has already given you fodder for enforcement. So now, rather than ask, not right now, rather than ask from off the air, why is this governor running for the NASA coalition? Now you have a code of conduct to ask a principal in NASA or a secretary general of a party in NASA or an official of a party in NASA, why have you cleared so-and-so, and here is your code of conduct.
Okay, now we're talking about raising the threshold of our politicians and the country in general. There's an article in the paper today talking about majority of the politicians being dishonest. And the fact that I think there's a post, I don't know if you got them as politicians, but there was a caption that was going around on social media, Fagia Wote, where it was talking about literally getting rid of all the political class and getting a new class. Now, when we look at the politicians we have, and I want us to, maybe this is to you, Onyango Olo, when we have somebody saying one thing today, and tomorrow they turn around and say something totally different, what happened in the dark? What happened?
Are you asking
you are Secretary General for TNA, literally speaking for government, and we have a soundbite here of some of the things you had to say regarding government. Then the next day you've turned around, and how do we trust you as a politician? But before you, let's just hear what you had to say about Jubilee, then we'll come back to you.
As the Secretary General of the National Alliance, I find this untoward action by the Court Brigade very unbecoming. A few months ago, we heard of men in black disrupting their elections. A few days ago, they changed their shirts to be men in white, disrupting their elections. We had all along thought that this was activity of goons belonging to the CORD coalition. It is very shocking that it has not just been the preserve of the CORD goons, but it is actually an orchestration and well-calculated and practiced behavior of the CORD leadership as a whole. That they would extend the dates to the National Assembly is something that we condemn in the strongest terms and say that the Speaker of the Assembly must take appropriate action against the men and the women who imported violence into the August House. We are more particularly disturbed that a sitting speaker, in particular the deputy speaker, was disgraced and humiliated by a sitting member of parliament. This talks a lot about the caliber of people that are elected as people's representatives. I do not think that a person who aspires to leadership and is actually given the honor of serving his people in a national legislation would have the guts to pour water onto a speaker of the assembly. Such uncouth and unbecoming behavior must be condemned, and as a party, we are asking the Speaker of the Assembly to take stern action to forestall this kind of action from taking place in future. Beside that, let me say that the Jubilee Coalition is firm and committed in implementing the security laws that have now been passed, and we are asking the President to put his hands onto this document the earliest possible. It is not the intention of the Jubilee Coalition to convert Kenya's democracy into a dictatorship, but peculiar times call for peculiar actions. Trying times call for very decisive actions, and therefore the CORD Brigade cannot have their cake and have it at the same time. They cannot complain On the one hand, that insecurity is getting out of hand, and on the other, decline to give the government a position or the weapons with which to fight insecurity.
Yes. So Onyango Law, what happened in the dark? There you are one time defending Jubilee and saying you've referred to CORD as goon. Now you're part of the goons that you...
Get it right. I condemned thuggery. I still condemn thuggery even in my new outfit. Nothing has changed in my personal position. A lot of things changed. Remember, I was the Secretary General of the National Alliance, not of the Jubilee Coalition. So, the question maybe would have best been put, what made you change your position from the TNA to come to
So what made
CORD?
you change your position?
Maybe that way I would help you, but from what you have displayed to Kenyans and the world at large, nothing has changed as a matter of personal conviction. I still condemn thuggery. I still maintain that peculiar times call for peculiar measures. I still maintain that when we have issues that are very, very demanding, it calls for stern and firm leadership. What made me change? You remember, as I had mentioned, I was the Secretary General of the National Alliance. At that time, the Jubilee Coalition, which we formed, of course, had other party members, notably the United Republican Party. We had all along believed that we were intended to take this country to the next level, and I still believe the president is committed to that. Along the way, we were inundated with issues of corruption, and mega corruption at that, starting with the NYS, medical, health, etc., etc. And I was in the forefront defending the government, that these were probably opposition propaganda. And I did that based on facts that were tabled before me, that these were opposition propaganda intended to destabilize the government. Along the way, a lot of things changed. We started accusing ourselves. One was doing a catwalk, one was carrying money with the gunias. Then it became clear that maybe the defense that I was mounting on behalf of my party was not cogent, was not, the opposition was probably right.
So were you blindly defending the party without
I was
knowing?
being given the document to support that Madam Waiguru was innocent.
So what changed in between that now you suddenly realized that the information you had was not true?
That is what I'm bringing to you. The moment now we realized, this thing I think went to the Senate. From nowhere we had Murkomen's name being mentioned, Duale's name being mentioned, so and Waiguru and the other one called Kavura being mentioned. And the moment they were taken before the Senate committee, or was it the National Assembly committee, and there were admissions. From that point, Mike, I challenge you to produce a clip where I defended them. None. But moving forward, we merged our parties and we became one. And even then, I still believe that my TNA side would still probably cleanse the other side. But once we started establishing the county offices, I can tell you, with no fear of contradiction, the wing that we had seen to be more involved in corruption virtually swept 90% of the seats. Then I realized, basically, I would have no way to wriggle out of this corruption. I'm sinking more and more into defending something that is indefensible. That is what changed.
Professor, what's your take on you're the one who talks about narratives and different narratives. Here we have somebody who literally defended Jubilee hook, line, and sinker at one time. The next time he's now in court. As Kenyans, can we trust this caliber of politicians? And it's not just him.
Michael, I have done an article on Onyango Law's situation. And in that article, I'm very clear that Onyango Law is very eloquent. And Onyango Law has a name that would sanitize TNA tribal leanings. So they were looking for a name, and they were looking for eloquence. And the victim happens to be one Onyango Law. I remember him when they were launching TNA and the kind of lofty things that he was saying. And I said, next time I want a hired mouth, this is the one that I will pick. because he did a good job.
Insults.
He was a hired hand, and he did a good. He was a hireling, and he did a good job.
What do you mean by hired hand? How much was paid?
Tell us.
No, you are telling us. You must be knowing.
You tell us. Unless you're saying you're a... Unless you're saying you're a...
Prof, if you're going to make an accusation,
Please,
then it better
substantiate
okay, fine.
Unless you're figuratively speaking, then
I'm figuratively saying that Onyango Law is not a political philanthropist. He was on call by TNA then as their mouthpiece, as a Secretary General.
Okay, but he's here to tell us
I hope they made it worth his while. If they didn't make it worth his while, Pole sana, he was played.
He was the chairman of something.
Yes.
What was it?
Now, that's number one. Number two, let us come back, Michael, to the discussion about integrity and this issue of vetting politicians who do not have integrity. And I want to pick this issue up from what Omar is saying. Omar is telling us that NASA have a code of conduct in terms of ethics and in terms of the threshold of moral threshold of politicians. Michael, the problem with the current political class we have on both sides is that they do not believe in constitutionalism. What they did is that they mutilated Chapter 6 of the Constitution, which had set a very high threshold. Now they are telling us they will set their own threshold within the parties. Never mind that the main one has been mutilated. If Jubilee and NASA are interested in setting a threshold for ethics, it is in the Constitution. Can we discuss the Constitution? Let us not start setting aside some thresholds and some codes of conduct that can be manipulated by the politicians. Last week, Michael, I told you that the only way the politicians can deal with the issue of corruption is by politicizing it, okay? So they do not want to deal with the issue of ethics as a constitutional issue. They want to deal with it as a political issue so that they can manipulate it. That is number one. Number two, to prove to you that these people are not interested in enforcing anything. There is nothing that NASA is saying that they will do about corruption that they could not have done by now.
Well, they may bring in the 7-point...
Forget about the 7-point. I want to give you an example. They claim, and we had this claim yesterday from Sifuna when we did Checkpoint, that they will bar MPs and governors and MCAs and senators from doing business with government. There is nothing that stops CORD and ODM from doing that now. Nothing stops them. If they were truly committed to the fight on corruption, today, ODM and WIPA and CORD MPs, senators, governors should not be doing business with government. What these people are telling us is that they are a government in waiting, okay? So that we should be seeing some of these things that they're claiming they will do, right. We should be seeing them now.
Let me hear from Senator Omar Hassan, because you had brought in the issue of raising the threshold. And when you talk about raising the threshold, this sometimes to the electorate, it sounds like a pie in the sky. And the reason I say that is because currently we already have counties that are under CORD or NASA, as it were, leadership. But we have not seen that threshold raised in those counties.
Nope. No, that's irony, as I told you. Is the
and I know the argument might be the fact that you don't have national resources to deal with that. But at the county level, we've not seen corruption being fought with the same veracity as it is done with the national level.
As I said, in response to Professor Wanaina particularly, well, a constitution is a politically negotiated document. Unfortunately, the political class in the making of our constitution had leverage sometimes to alter or amend almost with unfettered discretion. And I do agree, I'm one of those who lamented when I was in the civil society and the KNCHR at that point in time that the threshold in integrity had been lowered substantially to a point where that's why now Onyango Law can say that you need to be sentenced for at least 6 months in jail and have exhausted all your machinery of appeal for you to qualify. No, I'm saying that's what the Constitution says for you now. So now, but before that, the threshold had been raised that where there is a reasonable ground to believe that you have offended any part of the Constitution or law, or where you're under investigation on serious crimes, including economic crimes, then you shall cease to hold public office. So we removed all those caveats and all those high thresholds as we were putting now. But as I said, now based on the fact that we have a constitution, then we need to now internalize within our own policies, within our own laws, framework of laws, what thresholds are we setting? And therefore then that becomes the basis upon which part of the spirit of the Constitution can be carried into our own conduct of public affairs. And when you come to the issue of public office, of court counters, I've been one of those persons, including Senator Khalwale, including Senator Junior. I actually know the senators who've been speaking against corruption in their counties, who've stood up very firm about corruption, not only in their counties, but corruption across board, where we said if it is bad in Jubilee, then it is definitely bad in court. In fact, when you do it at some point, there's some of our partners, twist that and call you a mole and all kinds of things. I'm happy I'm in a party where this small thing doesn't work. When you say something, it is factual, it is factual. If it is a position, it's a right position, it is taken. So when we started to raise eyebrows about part of the corruption within some of our governors, it was never taken that we were doing a Jubilee errand or a mole, this whole thing of vilifying people on account of people asking legitimate questions or people having legitimate ambitions is a preserve of some of our players within the context of our politics. So there is nothing, I do agree that there has been some gaps in terms of how we have dealt with our own internally. And these are the gaps that can now be remedied to the political process. There's a political process that is coming, and that political process can remedy this.
All right, we'll have to do closing comments. Time has run out. Weda,
yes.
Your closing comments in terms of now the integrity and the leaders that we have, and whether Kenyans really have a choice.
I think the president has set the tone. Let us forget the past. Let us not look so much in the back. It has to start somewhere. Integrity should have started somewhere. It has started in the Jubilee Party. I hear NASA also has some document. Let us continue enforcing these things. In another 10 or 20 years, the thieves shall have left the river and real people will run the country and progress shall be flowing into every house. Let us start. Do your part, however little. Here, in your house and everywhere.
Onyangolo, your closing comments.
I think one thing that we must be candid and truthful to our listeners and the country as a whole. One, that we cannot rewrite the Constitution through a code of conduct. That the code of conduct cannot be a primary document that is more powerful and above the Constitution. Secondly, let every Kenyan know that all these political parties, especially the major three political parties, are funded by the exchequer. So an individual, whether it's the party leader or is the secretary general or the chairman, cannot wake up one day with a page of his written document and set those as conditions which must be met. The conditions have been set in the Constitution, have been set in the Elections Act and all the relevant laws. Please, this is the beginning of anarchy if we allow people to rewrite their own laws as they please that go against the Constitution.
All right, we'll have to wind it up right there. Thank you, gentlemen, for joining us this morning. That's the way it is. And this is where, if you're on KTN Home, we part ways. Life and Style is about to begin. Those of us on KTN News, we've got some news updates coming up. Then later on, we've got Sports Chat with Robin Toskin. That is the way it is.